Good morning. So the Torah commands us in this week's Torah portion, do not fear. How is this possible? Well, first of all, let's start off with L'chaim today. L'chaim, and this is actually the secret to not fearing, the secret to not being afraid, is saying L'chaim, as I'll explain in today's Torah class. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nהיה b'doro. L'chaim, may we all experience happiness. May we not experience fear, anxiety, depression, negative, evil thoughts. May we all have what to be thankful for and be happy. L'chaim, l'chaim. That's how we be happy and not fear. Let me explain. So first of all, we say every day in our prayers, Al tira mipachat pisom, do not fear. Every single Saturday night when we start our week, we say in the Havdalah prayer, Hine kel yeshuati eftach velo efchad. I will not be afraid. We find that the Torah is full of people being calmed down by God himself. Hagar, when she ran away from Abraham's house, she was stuck in the desert with her son Ishmael. An angel comes to her. We read this on Rosh Hashanah in our prayer, in the Torah reading. Al tir'i, the angel tells her, don't be afraid. We are told about Moses. Moses was afraid about killing Og. God had to calm him down and say, Al tira oto, don't be afraid. Abraham had to be told by God, Al tira Abraham, anochi magen lach, don't fear, I will be your shield and protector. Yitzchak, as he leaves his home, searching for water, was told by God, Al tira. Yaakov, when he wanted to go down to Egypt, he was afraid. God told him, Al tira, don't worry, I will be there with you. Time and time again, God tells our prophets, don't be afraid. In fact, we find that the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, when he was 4 or 5 years old, he was orphaned from his father and mother. The last words that he heard from his father were Yisrolik, fear nothing but God alone. Don't fear anybody or anything but God alone. So I want to share the screen with you because the Torah in this week's Torah portion commands us, don't be afraid. Let me show you the screen. Okay, so the screen in front of you has a direct quote from Dvarim this week. Ki teitzeh lamilchama, the Torah says, when you go out to war, against your enemy. You see horses and chariots, a nation, a big, big nation. Lo tira mehem, you shall not fear them. Ki Hashem Elokecha imach hamalcha ma'aretz Mitzrayim, because God the Lord is with you, who takes you out of Egypt. Okay, and then we continue. A soldier in war. When you go approach battle, and the Kohen will go out and he will speak to the people and he will tell them, Shema Yisrael, listen, you are today approaching battle against your enemies. Let your heart not be faint. You shall not be afraid. You shall not be alarmed. You shall not be terrified because of them. Why? For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight with you against your enemies to save you. Now translate this into 2020, translate this into Corona era, translate this into the conversations happening on social media today, and people are afraid, very, very afraid, anxious, anxiety. So many people are on Prozac, taking pills just to calm themselves down. And the Torah says, there's a commandment, you shall not be afraid. And as I mentioned time and time again, the Torah says, don't be afraid. Now, I'm not trying to minimize the coronavirus, for example. I'm not trying to minimize the thing that you are afraid of. You know, you should do everything in your power, wear masks and be cautious and social distance, for example, or whatever that fear and anxiety that drives you. Of course, you should do things to protect yourselves, but at the same time, you shall not be afraid. The fear, the anxiety, the panic, that is something the Torah commands us to eradicate. You shall not fear. And let's explain how. The Torah explains how right here in this lesson. By the way, this is a course by Torah Studies. This is all the Chabad people across the world. Rabbis are giving this class this week. So text 3 is from Maimonides from the Rambam. Shiziranu, we have been warned against fearing the enemy in war and not to flee from them. Rather, it is incumbent upon us to overcome, to stand, be strong against the other nation. Anyone who retreats and flees transgresses a negative commandment. Thus, the Supernal One has said, you shall not be terrified because of them, thereby repeating the warning that you shall not be afraid. The commandment is repeated to also imply that they should not flee or escape from battle, for only this way can the truth faith be preserved. The laws of this mitzvah are explicated in the 8th chapter of Tractate Sota. So think about it. You have a soldier who's about to fight in battle, right? The Hamas are there, the Hezbollah are there, Iran, who knows? 67, there were 60 armies trying to attack us and annihilate us, and yet the Torah commands us, do not be afraid. Can you imagine the soldier, the poor, tormented soldier? Torah tells him, I'm not trying to minimize the enemy. Yes, there's an enemy out there with tanks, with guerrilla weapons, with terrorism, all that. I'm not minimizing that for 1 minute, but I am telling you, you are not allowed to be afraid. And I'm going to explain now how that is even possible. So let's go on. I'm going to skip out here because I just want to get to the cut of the chase here. But anybody who wants the full class, welcome to email me afterwards. But this is all based on a letter by the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe. His name was the Tzemach Tzedek, and he wrote this beautiful letter which explains how we can calm ourselves down from being afraid. How does the soul express itself? Through 3 garments: thought, speech, and action. The soul is able to express itself, right? The soul is loves, or the soul fears, or whatever it is. There's 3 ways to express itself: thought, speech, and action. These are the primary factors in a person's conduct, and I'll read in English. And in each of them, we have free will and the power to think, to speak, and to act as the mind wills. Every single one of us has the power to think about whatever we want. Nobody has the ability to tell you what to think. You can think negative thoughts, or you could think positive thoughts. You could think and be depressed, or you could be happy. It's your choice. You could speak gossip, or you could speak words of Torah. You could steal, you could loot, you could protest, or you could build a sukkah, or you could blow the shofar, do an action which is a mitzvah. Even if there's fear in one's heart, it is possible to remove that fear through thought, speech, and action. The key is to not think or speak about it all, but to do the opposite. Thus, we are being commanded, do not be afraid, which means do not think about the fear. The Rambam in the Laws of Kings and Wars, chapter 7, has ruled accordingly that anyone who frightens himself or thinks thoughts of fear transgresses a negative commandment. That means like this. Where does fear come from? Why is a person afraid? So intellectually, you realize, okay, the Hamas, or my enemy is against me, is here, whatever. So therefore, I start thinking about it, and I start speaking about it, and I start doing actions about it. That is what feeds the fear. You see, what am I koching in? What am I delving in? What am I involved in? What am I thinking about? What am I engrossed in? Is my choice. If I'm engrossed in fear over the coronavirus, then yes, this will feed my fear. It's like a flame. You put more wood and more wood and more wood in a fire, it's going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. So how do I stop myself from being afraid? Instead of feeding the flames of fear, feed the flames of positivity, of good thoughts, of good things. And again, I'm not minimizing the dangers of whatever it is you're fearing, but I am suggesting you don't have to be afraid of it. What are you koching? What are you delving? What's your focus? Let your focus be positivity, and then you won't be afraid. This is exactly what the Tzemach Tzedek is writing here. As soon as one completely desists from said thoughts, the fear in their heart will automatically dissipate. Or at the very least, that fear will immediately become as if dormant and imperceptible to the body. And then after a few days, they will dissipate completely, so they won't enter one's mind at all, even as intrusive thoughts. Some people email me, they tell me, Rabbi, I'm paralyzed from fear. Literally, I can't do things from fear and anxiety and worry and pain. It's a real pain. So what does the Torah say? Stop thinking about it. It's that simple. Stop talking about it. Stop asking the whole time, how many new cases are there? And how many people are dying? And what's going on? Why don't you get to the Talmud and start learning Talmud? Get a chumash and start learning the weekly Torah portion. Get a Tanya and learn Tanya. And then you simply won't be afraid, because you won't be energized and motivated and thinking and speaking and doing things about your fear to feed it the whole time. What will you be feeding? Torah thoughts. And the Tzemach Tzedek continues in the letter. He says, when one withdraws from something, the fear subsides. The reason for this is because the intellectual and emotional attributes are sustained by da'at. You see, there's intellect and there's something called da'at. Da'at is the focus, the attention. What are you focused on? That, whatever you are focused on, is what is going to feed your emotions, right? The 6 emotions, which are love, fear, all the 6 emotions. What are they fed by? Da'at. Da'at is, what am I focused on? You want to know how to stop being afraid? Start focusing and paying attention to positivity, to positive thoughts. Go out and help somebody. Go to the hospital, visit somebody. Go out, give charity. Think to yourself, how can I make the world a better place? Not, how could I feed my fear? Therefore, by withdrawing one's thought, that is removed from the emotional attribute in question, and then the emotional attribute is deactivated as if it never was. And finally, the last bit over here, in the same letter, the Tzemach Tzedek writes, in the main, the diversion of da'at and of one's thought is achieved by guarding one's thoughts and by investing them elsewhere. This can even be in worldly matters, if they are pressing or positive, and in God's Torah, which gladdens the heart each and every day by setting fixed time for Torah studies, especially when together with another study partner. This is such a simple advice from the Tzemach Tzedek, but so profound. So profound, it's so simple, but a lot of people don't notice this, don't pay attention to this. It's, what are you paying attention to? What are you, when you have dinner at your table and you with your family or with your loved ones, what conversation is taking place around that table? That is the question. What are you talking about? Are you talking about the fear and feeding that frenzy? Or is it calm in your house? Are you talking about positivity and how good the world is and how great and awesome God is? Are you talking about this class right now, the commandment of the Torah to a soldier, do not fear? And finally, the Tzemach Tzedek concludes, what's more, and this is why I mentioned the L'chaim over here, what's more, a person ought to be very careful not to speak of any melancholy matters. Stop speaking about depressing thoughts. To the contrary, one ought to exhibit joyous mannerisms, as though his heart was full with happiness. You see, when we act positively, when we say l'chaim and drink and dance and sing, this causes that we will be happy. In other words, even if by nature we're depressed and unhappy and we're feeling like, we are all bad and everything else, if we act happy, if we dance, if we act b'simcha, this will cause that we will actually be happy. You ever see a car engine which doesn't start? You try to start it, doesn't start. You know what you do? Start pushing the car, pushing it. When you push it, then you ignite the car. It will ignite. It will go on, hopefully. So the same thing is with me. If I'm feeling depressed and slouchy and lazy and everything else, but now I turn myself on by saying l'chaim and singing, and be happy. This will cause that even if the world around me is depressed and in melancholy, I will be happy because I will change the world. How do I change everybody around me? If I myself exhibit positive thoughts, it will change everybody around me as well. Right? In the Tzemach Tzedek's words, the reason for this is that the deeds and the activities the person performs subsequently become fixed in his heart. As the Rambam writes, he shall perform once, the second time, then the third, the actions he does because they are reasonable, and then those attributes will be affixed in his heart. So the bottom line for today's class is, it is within our power to be happy. It is within our power to control our thoughts, to control our emotions, to control everything we do. Let us all do this. I'm going to say another l'chaim now. L'chaim. We should all only experience happiness, positivity, goodness, and kindness, and may we merit to the coming of Mashiach right now. L'chaim, l'chaim, v'livracha.